I was born in Boston in 1949. I never wanted this fact to be known. In fact, I've spent the better half of my adult life trying to sweep my early years under the carpet and have a life that was clearly just mine and independent of the historic fate of my family. Can you imagine what it was like to be one of them? To talk like them, to be built like them, to have the benefits of being born into such a wealthy and powerful American family. I went to the best schools. I had all kinds of tutors and trainers. I traveled widely. I met the famous, the controversial, and the not so admirable. And I knew from a very early age that if there were ever any possibility of escaping the collective fate of this famous Boston family, I would take that route, and I have. I hopped on an Amtrak to New York in the early 70s, and I guess you could say my hidden years began. I thought, well, I'll be a poet. What could be more foolish and obscure? I became a lesbian. Every woman in my family looks like a dyke, but it's really stepping off the flag when you become one. Well, holding this ignominious pose, I have seen and I have heard, and I'm beginning to think there is no escaping history. A woman I was currently having an affair with said, "You know, you look like a Kennedy." I felt the blood rising in my cheeks. People have always laughed at my Boston accent, confusing large for lodge, party for party. But when this unsuspecting woman invoked for the first time my family name, I knew the jig was up. Yes, I am a Kennedy. My efforts to remain obscure have not served me well. Starting as a humble poet, I quickly climbed to the top of my profession, assuming a position of leadership and honor. It is right that a woman should call me out now. Yes, I am a Kennedy. And I await your orders. You are the new Americans. The homeless are wandering the streets of our nation's greatest city. Homeless men with AIDS are among them. Is that right? That there are no homes for the homeless? That there is no free medical help for these men and women? That they get the message that as they are dying, this is not their home? And how are your teeth today? Can you afford to fix them? How high is your rent? If art is the highest and most honest form of communication of our time, and the young artist can no longer afford to move here to speak to her time. Yes, I could, but that was 15 years ago. And remember, as I must, I'm a Kennedy. Shouldn't we all be Kennedys? Our nation's greatest city is home of the businessman, home of the rich artist, people with beautiful teeth who are not on the streets. What should we do about this dilemma? Listen, I've been educated. I've learned about Western civilization. Do you know what the message of Western civilization is? I am alone. Am I alone tonight? I don't think so. Am I the only one with bleeding gums in this room tonight? Am I the only homosexual in this room? Am I the only one whose friends have died or dying now? And my art can't be supported until it is gigantic, bigger than everyone else's, confirming the audience's feeling that they are alone, that they alone are good, deserve to buy the tickets to see this art, are working, are healthy, should survive, and are normal. Are you normal tonight? Everyone here, are we all normal? It is not normal for me to be a Kennedy, but I am no longer ashamed, no longer alone. I'm not alone tonight because we are all Kennedys, and I am your president. So what is this about leaving New York? Well, it's something I think about all the time. It's not just art. A couple of years ago, I was staggering through my apartment trying to decide whether to write a screenplay or pay my rent. I bashed my leg against a sharp piece of furniture. Blood started pouring out on the floor. I live in a cubist apartment. I run out to the hallway. I start screaming, "Help! Help!" Nobody's home. I run back into my apartment. I pick up the phone. I start calling my friends. All I get is answering machines. "Hi, this is Eileen. I'm bleeding to death." I went to this party last weekend. There were all these 19-year-old lesbians. They were moving here. I wanted to say, "Here, take my cheap apartment. I'm leaving." But where am I going to go? Once when I passed East 4th Street off First Avenue, I think it was an early fall, and I had a small hole in the shoulder of my white shirt and another on my back. I looked just beautiful. There was a whole moment in the 70s when it was beautiful to have holes in your sweaters and shirts. By now it was 1981, but I carried that 70s style around like a torch. There was a whole way of feeling about yourself that was more European than American. Unless it was American around 1910, when it was beautiful to be a strong, starving immigrant who believed so much in herself, and she was part of a movement as big as history, and it explained the hole in her shirt. It's the beginning of summer tonight, and every season has cracks through which winter or fall might leak out. The most perfect flavor of it, oddly, in June. Oh, remember when I was an immigrant? I took a Black Beauty and got up from the pile of poems around my knees and just had too much energy for thought and went over to your house where there was continuous beer. Finally, we were just drinking Rheingold, a hell of a beer. At the door, I mentioned I had a crush on both of you. What you say to a couple. By now, the kids were in bed. I can't even say clearly now that I wanted the woman, though it seemed to be the driving principle then, wanting one of everything. I was part of a generation of people who went to the bars on 7th Street and drank the cheap whiskey and the ale on tap and dreamed about when I would get you alone, those big breasts. I carried these slim notebooks which only permitted 2 or 3 word lines. I need you, nearing the horse. I had blood in all my titles and milk. I had 2 bright blue pills in my pocket. I loved you so much. It was the last young thing I ever did, the end of my renaissance, an immigration into my dream world, which even my grandparents had not dared to live, being prisoners of schizophrenia and alcoholism, though I was lovers of the two. The beauty of the story is that it happened. It was the last thing that happened in New York. Everything else happened when I was stopping it from happening. Everything else had a life of its own. I don't think I owe them an apology, though at least one of their kids hates my guts. She can eat my guts for all I do. I had this small hole in the front of my black sleeveless sweater. It was just something that happened. I like to put my finger in it. It got larger and larger. In the month of December, I couldn't get out of bed. I kept waking up at 6 p.m. and it was Christmas or New Year's, and I had to start drinking and eating. I remember you handing me the most beautiful red plate of pasta. It was like your cunt on a plate. I met people in your house, even found people to go out and fuck, regrettably not knowing about the forbidden fruit. I forget what the only sin is. Somebody told me recently. I pick up a book and another book, and memory and separation seem to be all anyone writes about, or all they seem to let me read. But I remember those beautiful holes on my back, like a beautiful cloak of feeling. They tell me to use the space. A couple of years, no, actually 10 years ago. 10 years ago, a bunch of us did this performance piece. It was called Joan of Arc, a spiritual entertainment. It was a big collaboration. There were like 20 of us working on it for 6 months for a one-night performance. There's no documentation. There's no videotape. All I've got for a souvenir is this poem. Today, May 30th, Joan of Arc was burned. She was 19, and when she died, a man saw white doves fly from her mouth. Joan was born in 1412 between Lorraine and Champagne. Joan was raised on legends. Merlin said France would be lost by a woman and saved by a virgin. Joan was not an adventurous girl, not a tomboy, but very dreamy, good, stay at home, the baby of the family. Joan never got her period. She heard these voices in the bells. She saw angels in colored glass. She believed the sun moved around the earth because that's what she saw. She believed God wanted Charles VII to be king of France because that's what Michael, Margaret, and Catherine told her when she listened to the bells. Her father said he'd drown her if she didn't stop this nonsense. She was 19 years old when they burned her body while she was still alive in the middle of town. White doves came out of her mouth as she died. 567 years ago today, a dove leaped right out of her mouth. I always fall in love with tired women. It seems I have the time. On the blackboard at the Gay Community Center, it says, "Ladies, we need your blood. Afterwards, come to the Women's Coffee House and have a cup of coffee. Donation $1. He won't be complaining about his big toe that hurts, the man who died last night. The death squad has taken him away. I think of all the clothes that guy must have had. Now no one can stand to wear them. I use Central America and Southeast Asia to ease my mind. Pauline Kael says that's squalid. We live in a culture of vanishing men. What is the difference? Vincent's big joke is his 5-year membership to a video club. They got him on the phone at the hospital. He didn't know how to tell them 1 year would probably do just fine. Another thin man does a nightclub act. He does show tunes to the horror of his visiting friends. He'll take it on the road once he gets better. At last he knows what he wants to do. Jimmy Wayne's family says, well, that's what you get. But I get something different. What I do at my desk is always different from what I do on my bed. I was watching the difference last week. This week I'm different again. Is it because of windows that I think the day's square and life is shaped like a train? The big buds outside my window make me think I'm outside of life because I can watch her change and she can't see me. You'd think I'd be grateful for my vision. It is complex. A dance of images, gates and branches, across buildings, statues, fire escapes, and creeping cats. Honey, life is a blast and I'm part of it, but you're separate from me. It's how you want it. The radio starts up and I nearly lose my style. I open my heart to you and now I feel like an open wound. I put my arms around you. I thought it felt great. I called it heaven one day. Disturbing once the train moved. Now nothing's the same. My friend asked me to go on a yoga retreat with her this weekend. I said, I can't, I gotta work. She says, well, that's too bad, you're so nervous. I said, I'll stretch at work. My great sacrifice exists between the inarticulate fingers of a tree, sparkling up through a brooding blue. As I wheel it to the gym in a cab, though the air is wet tonight, and I want to take you in my arms and go to Europe. Oh, baby, we must. Kissing all the droplets off your back in the shower now, and the radiators sizzling against the loss and the apparent despair and decay in the walls of the way we live. Anyone can see it now, even Joan. I can't change a thing, but it's warm, terrifically warm against the oncoming winter of 1986, when I was born with you, who are always moving your teepee away, but I usually follow. I don't want to browbeat you, oh black and white, black and white. The cops in the city whooping up first like big dogs. I have to stay true on the street I was born on. This is an oath. Don't lie. I am slipping, I am lying. My great sacrifice exists because everyone sees it and I need that a lot. I am such a big lesbian I have to jump off a cliff. I'm such a handsome poet I have to become an advocate of verse and stop lying and get rich. Every time I dress better, pretty soon I'm speechless or broke soon, I hope. Or release me from the hostage of, oh, working for you, baby, or what? In a cab driving through a slick woman's arms, I was not slipping and sliding alone. It was you in a beautiful dress, black and white, black and white. I have felt things here which I assume belonged to 14 when I was perfect. Oh, you a man or something wonderful? The great sacrifice is she slides an icicle down my blouse. She's a jerk. The wonder of the universe is she did not get spoiled. She can hold me. I can hold her also. Every bit of ice breaks up. It flows down the river streaming. Tiniest glistening droplets on the branches of the tree this winter, and the dampness on your hair and the light. When I go this way, and you got your coat, black, wrapped around you now, as you walk home, with the street lights on your back, because you are the North. My mother turned 65 today. The most beautiful poet in the universe is her daughter. Does she know that? Mom, you sound like the world's youngest senior citizen. She's just giggling with delight at her new senior citizen's bus pass she got this morning. She sounds like she's waited her whole life for a free ride. Mom, do you use that Walkman? Are you using that Walkman? Oh, yes. Because I was thinking I would send you something. No, she assures in a terrified tone. You've done enough. I just listen to my radio. That's plenty. No more Walkman stuff. No, thank you. Where are you calling from? Well, this is costing you plenty. This is coming out of your budget. Well, this has been fine. This has been just enough. Thank you for calling. Uh-huh. Everything's so far away. My jacket's over there. I'm terrified to go and you won't miss me. I'm terrified by the bright blues of the subway. Other days I'm so happy and prepared to believe that everyone walking down the street is someone I know. The oldness of Macy's impresses me. The wooden escalators as you get higher up to the furniture, credit, lampshades. You shopped here as a kid? You deserve me. In a movie called Close Up, once in a while the wiggly bars, notice the wiggly blue bars of the subway entrance, the grainy beauty, the smudge. I won't kill myself today. It's too beautiful. My heart breaking down 23rd Street to share this with you, the sweetness of the frame. My body in perfect shape for nothing but death. I want to show you this. On St. Mark's Place, a madman screams, "My footsteps, the drum beats of Armageddon." Oh yeah, bring me closer to you, Lord. I want to die close up. A handful of bouncing yellow tulips for David. I admit I love tulips because they die so beautifully. I see salvation in their hanging heads. How do they get to feel so free? I feel trapped by love. Over French fries, my eyes wander to the way bar, a blue sign across the life. On my way to making logic, to making a point, to not falling in love tonight and let my pain remain unwrapped, to push the machine. Paul's staying in touch. But oh, remember Jessica Lange? She looks so beautiful, all doped up on her way to meet King Kong. I sit on my little red couch in February. How do they get to feel so free? 1 million women, not me, moving through the street tonight of this filmy city. And I crown myself again and again, and there can't be two kings. What's the two best smelling things in the world? The inside of my briefcase, and then this person I know. The birds are screeching for attention today, wind blowing boats down the street. People in leather backpacks talking about Chanel. My laundry plump in my hand. I can see you through the grid of my life, a slight distance, doing your things. I want to go take your temperature, go to Russia with you. Look in your eyes, so foreign and blue. They look like a couple of question marks. I stand with my cup in my hand, this day while it's waiting for you. It's a new year. You try and stick your keys in the door. Your neighbor's feet are coming down. Your fingers slip. His wrist goes for the knob because he's in. That's the problem with doors. The people inside have no patience with my fumbling. What kind of year is this? Life is a vow that frightens as it deepens. You know which ones. I've never written a poem to you before, wearing my organs outside. Or am I in, lifting myself like a chalice to time, a can of Coke spinning on the floor? You're right, I'm different. That might be all we invented this year. In light of the recent interpretations, translations, migrations, in spite of all that, it's great that we did one single thing, to be different. And now that it shows, we should go really slow, wearing our difference like streamers and leaves, bringing our gifts to the city, to watch the monster slowly unwrap us, naked and forlorn. And I'm not like anyone else. Feeling my foot, I hear music, bridging the city. It's not the poor, it's not the rich, it's us. And improved public transportation and cable TV. I'm giving up my idea of writing a great poem. I hate this shitty little place. And a dog takes a bite of the night. We realized the city was sold in 1978, but we were asleep. We woke and the victors were all around us, criticizing our pull chain lights. And we began to pray, oh God, take care of the city. And take care of me. Cigarettes and coffee were always enough in my youth. Now when I wake up thousands of times in the day, I was in the process of buying my love a shepherd's flute. And a thin hand picked the one I wanted off the top of the pile, the one I heard which played so sweet. And I bought a dud. Hardly better than a soda bottle. Swell, you said. Well, the backpack you gave me has started to rip. And the scarf, well, I love the scarf, but I keep reliving that Canal Jean remark. Because there's no place for the ironic in plain living. It goes so fast, so you must be direct. Symbolically, I want my black jersey back. Realistically, you must give it to me because I will keep talking to your machine if you don't. Our mayor is a murderer. Our president is a killer. Jean Harris is still not free, which leads me to question the ethics of our governor, who I thought was good. There is an argument for poetry being deep, but I am not that argument. There is an argument which chiefly has to do with judging something which has nothing to do with money as worthless because you don't make any money from it. Did you call your mother a fool when she brought you your oatmeal in the morning? I can't explain my life from the point of view of all the nooks and crannies I occupied in my childhood. Yet there I sat, smoking. More than anything, I want privacy. If I keep doing this, you will leave me alone. And what about poor children, dying in the streets of Calcutta today, or little swollen bellies in Africa? A public death, of course, has no song. At some point, I decided I would want to die in my home, and so I would have to have it, as others would have to have none. Sometime after they sold New York, I began seeing you. I was dreaming, but I felt your judgment, and I saw your face. And a woman stepped out of my house, and she opened the door. So I chased her. David, can we have something a little more intimate? It's funny how that works. I really had no damn business there. I mean, why am I living with my ex-girlfriend and her new girlfriend and her ex-girlfriend? How could that possibly be comfortable? I could be writing this from a jail cell. Funny, huh? Ted and Alice, before I left, said, "Out of the frying pan and into the fire, Eileen." I flew, yes I did, up to Portland, and Barb and Judy picked me up there. I was so ripped on the plane. Eleanor had given me some of that crystal, one good line, and I had a handful of Tom's pills. He had stayed at my place the night before. I was writing these poems up in the air, really stupid ones all over those cocktail napkins they give you. God, were they awful. About vitamins and stuff. I was off cigarettes, which always made me particularly insane. And I had those red beads on. When did they break? I remember them breaking in Maine. Well, the two of them picked me up there. I remember we went right into a bar. I think I remember having a shrimp salad sandwich and beers. And Barbara was already drinking icy margaritas. The place had all lobsters up and traps and all. Then we got back in Judy's car. That night we went to the gay bar in Augusta. God, that night. We were all speeding and drunk, and it was real hot. All the men were dancing and taking their shirts off. We got mad. We wanted to take our shirts off. We did. Everyone thought it was great, except for the manager and a couple of fag bartenders. Put them on. The men don't have to put their shirts on. Just get out. You can't be in here with your shirts off. Put your shirts on and get out. We did. But first we took our pants off. Barbara threw a beer bottle at them, too. She always had a lot of style. This is just 7 years ago. After that, everything went pretty much the same way. The night I was all amorous in the backseat of Judy's car with Dara, her ex-girlfriend, we were actually out looking for Barb, who had left us because she was looking for someone else. A man. Barbara had been picked up by the cops for whatever the main initials were for operating under the influence. Understand, this is common practice to get arrested. We worked at this mill, and every morning, or pretty close, someone had been arrested for speeding, drunken driving, had an accident, got in a fight. This was baseball hat and truck country. The men were all men, and we were all lesbians. And everyone loved to get smashed. After work, we'd sit on this big green lawn, and Casey, the boss, would put down case after case of Labatt's or Bud Light, and we'd just get crazy. Sheila was a problem. She was this big blonde girl, and she was Casey's girlfriend. And she was really interested in the fact that Barbara and I were lesbians. Now, I am a sucker for paternalism. I love having a boss who's a young, good old boy. And when his girlfriend seems to want to turn the other way, fascinating as it seems, and I do want to be the one she's wild about, nonetheless, I try and turn the other way. Barbara stopped drinking after the arrest night. She still had to go to court. It was a small mess. I loved her not drinking. She just got prettier and prettier, all glowing, and she got rid of that bloat she was getting from beer. I've never seen it make as much difference as it did with her. Also, it was a relief. One night I was in bed with Judy, and she came at me with a crowbar. "I'm going to reshape your head, asshole." What a frightening moment. I could see the outline of her hand, head, and crowbar against the strong light from behind her. See, I had actually been up for a week the month before, and it was just like Valhalla. I mean, it was just like paradise. Judy has this house in the middle of all this land in Maine, and there's sheep out back, bang. And dogs, one a black lab named Myles. And little kittens and hens out back, and a rooster, and fresh eggs, and beautiful breakfasts with fried potatoes, and Tia Maria and our coffee in bed. The first night I was up that time, Barbara and I were instantly back in love once we got drunk. We were out in the hallway kissing each other going, "What about Judy?" So the three of us were in their big bed, and I just happily climbed right on top of Judy. Barbara didn't like that. I wasn't supposed to get so into it. So it was smash battles right from the start. There was only one major eruption that first week. Barbara had gone out running, leaving Judy and me alone in bed. And when she came back, something was going on that, "How come you never fucking do that to me, Judy?" Judy would soon get hers. Barbara was an emotional tyrant. Her and I had lived together in New York for a couple of years before she came to Maine. It took watching the movements of her and Judy's relationship to see just how impossible and demanding she was. I myself was a good-natured cloud, which would float by and steal things and wait for praise. I could never understand why life just didn't feel substantial enough. We were sitting on your couch and we were drinking your whiskey in my apartment. "Now let's go out," I'd say. "Do you have any money?" "I'm broke tonight. I'm really sorry." One night after work, we all went drinking in Bath, Maine. We meant me, Barb, who was breaking out that night. She figured it'd be okay. Sheila wanted to come with us, and we had to go home and pick up Judy. I guess they had some guy in Bath they played with, Mr. Michael, some kind of architect with a loft. All of Judy's friends were professionals pretending to be artists. They were pretty disgusting, yet they had the stuff, the houses, the cars, the lofts. They had the mommies and daddies. Usually they're so insipid and have nothing to say, but you get to be fabulous for a while. For me, they're like jobs. I don't think Judy was overwhelmed with love for me. I think I was there to be neutralized. You know, Barb would get drunk and call me or just talk about me all the time. "Okay, let's get this icon and get her on my farm." Things would happen like the night Judy had her whole collection of mangy men over. Ron, the lumberman, she was always going clamming with tomorrow. Or who was a little weasel who knew all about what, electricity? They were all anti-urban intellectual types who were dying to fuck Judy, and who she kept around for, I don't know, entertainment and certainly real help. And I think she thought of them as colorful, possibly admirable. They made her think she was countrified. Judy was a consultant to an environmental outfit. She would go and look at fish factories and come back drunk. Previously, she had been a broker in San Francisco. Now she's some kind of film person in Boston. Judy looks right. And she'll never stop telling you about what kind of good girl school she dropped out of. Her mother's a drunk. She's one of those women who despises her mother, yet is just like her. So Judy said to Barb once, riding in her car, "I don't see where Eileen gets off thinking she has the last word on truth." That's what she said. What's funny is I picture the car saying it. shots where the white Datsun is wobbling along the narrow, windy roads of mid-coastal Maine, and the car goes, thinking she has the last word on truth. Fuck you, Judy. I remember standing in the back of the truck that fateful night, drinking a Bud Light, thinking, this is not going to be perfect. About the night, it looked too perfect, going with the girls to Bath. Judy and Barb would play with Michael. Judy on bass, Barb on rhythm, Michael on lead. Sheila and me roving through the local bars. It sounded okay, but what? What I was trying to say about Judy and her gross men is that she'd have these smelly, horny guys come over. That night we had made a pitcher of strawberry daiquiris with Mount Gay, what I was currently binging on. And once drunk, Barb passed a note to Judy, which I later learned said, I want to eat you. How Barb paid her rent. And the two went giggling, stumbling off, leaving me to be game warden to her charming friends. This is why I'd been invited to Maine. These guys would talk real slow, pausing after each phrase for your girl reaction. The best I could do was an occasional heh. After a while, I just stared at my feet. We had vodka and cranberry juice the Bath night. It wasn't doing anything. Those nights scare me, when your system is a great neutral ocean, and at some point, the sky will go black, and the sea and the sky will be the same color, and you won't be able to see anything. I can't get drunk on my favorite last words. At work, we dipped these small or sometimes fairly large frames into vats of stain. Their destination was the cheap carnivals and beach towns of America. You know those mirrors that say Grateful Dead or New York Yankees? At the end of the day, after dipping the frames into the vats of stain, lining them up on rows of 20 on the sticks overhead, bundling them, wrapping plastic tape around each bundle, and stacking them in the truck to Chicago or wherever. At the end of the day, I'd be covered from head to foot with brown stain. Dickensian looking, I thought. I didn't usually bother to get the stuff off before I got drunk. With me, sloppy has usually meant good, sexy. But this night we were using this glove. It was tan. It resembled bacon fat. It seemed to come in mason jars, but the people I knew bought it in quantity. We were really going out, so we had to take our spots off. That's what I usually resembled, a Dalmatian. I just think dogs are the cutest beings and the most perfect. Sheila seemed to be getting bombed on the vodka. Cape Codders, we called them. I remember taking showers, having a drink going and a beer going, being way up there and thinking that maybe tonight I wouldn't have to come down. The light was translucent, just pearly as we drove into Bath with plenty of beers in the car. I missed drugs. All we ever had was this shitty homegrown pot. David was coming up at the end of the month and I was begging him to bring heroin. It was beginning to seem preferable to getting drunk. I mean, if you were going to get really drunk, you could just achieve the same effect in a much less messy manner by snorting some stuff. I really liked it. The last time we got some, I got beat. We parked out in front of Michael's, and Sheila decided she needed to lay down in the loft. So we worked really hard, starting at about 6, so some nights we had no tolerance at all. So I went up for a minute. I kind of remember a big yellow bathroom and an extremely pleasant loft that Michael had done a lot of work on. Those people are so boring. I was glad to be going off on my own. The bars in Bath were like the bars everywhere, except with that New England distrust. No one talks to you. I whipped out my notebook, but I found I couldn't even communicate with myself. I was drinking vodka and grapefruit. I had on a white t-shirt with Fats Waller on the front. I ate a lot of peanuts. In the next bar, I switched to tequila. What could happen? The last place had been Mexican, so here I drank margaritas. I sat at like this long coffee table, kind of gothic looking, ancient S&M with a big candle. I didn't want anyone to get near me. The place was kind of datey looking, like it was attached to a restaurant. The clientele was sunburned and clean like vacationers. Was I feeling better? In the last place, when I had nothing to say in my notebook, I began to write the words from the jukebox. And only love can break your heart. Try and make sure right from the start. It made me suspicious. I had willed that I was really not still in love with Barb. I would be a dispassionate viewer. It would be a pleasure not to care. What if I didn't know what I felt anymore? I'd probably never known what I felt. I only liked getting drunk and being in love. I had been in love about 5 times and I was 32. If I wasn't either one of those things, I simply needed my rent, cigarettes, and coffee. Simple enough. I really liked the life of the poet. In barred Sheila and Barb. Judy's an asshole, Barb goes. What are you drinking, margaritas? Yay, let's get 4. I think you're slow. Then we were all in the bathroom, unrolling toilet paper all over the place and kissing each other. Michael and Judy arrived just as we were getting thrown out. In the next bar, we all seemed to be standing in line watching something. The order you stood in was very important, so I wanted to go outside. I think I was sitting on the curb when the cops arrived. Everything occurred very fast in some gray soup. The cop was pulling Barb out of the front seat of Judy's car. Barb was holding on to Judy's hair, who was holding on to the steering wheel tightly. Previously, they had been wrestling for the car keys. Drunk out of her mind, naturally, Barb wanted to drive. I guess I still do love her. She's a trophy to anger and intolerance with brown curly hair. She was always like my little sister I wanted to be as bad as. So she was bashing Judy's head against that thing the stick shift comes out of. Maybe she would have gotten the keys if that cop hadn't come along. I figured it wasn't my fight. See, I come from an alcoholic household and resultingly kind of don't react to violence. I think it terrifies me, but I'm so drawn to it. I've never hit anyone, but I would like to kill a lot of people. It's okay, I tell the cop, as he moves through the gray soup towards the white car. As the story goes, he said, "Stop," into the car window, and Barb punched him in the face. I love her. So that's when he started pulling her out. Like a famous tackle, I performed in 6th grade, the last tomboy gesture of pre-adolescence. I do not remember getting off the ground. I only remember sailing through the air, leaping on the cop's back, getting my arms around his neck to choke him or flip him or something. On my float towards him, I saw something. The girl god, or the dog god, or the dead drunken daddy god. All the gods that protect me in my living did not spur me to reach for the single thing I saw as I flew to his blue cop shoulders. The gun. No, I just landed up around the shoulders, so fast I was way over there on the ground, with my head smashed down and mace in my eyes. It stung. And there were tons of them now, cops, a holocaust, and yet handcuffs too. I was a freedom fighter of some kind. I had been in handcuffs a couple of times. Handcuffs make me wild. They were trying to take my picture down at the station. And naturally, I wouldn't stop making googly eyes, sticking my tongue out, spitting on the floor. They were not going to have an attractive prison picture of me. There was this fat woman guard I really had it in for. "You're a dyke. You're a traitor to women. Look at you, you big bull dyke. You like to suck cunt, don't you?" I started this in the squad car on the way to the jail, which wasn't far. The police station was right across the street from where Judy's white car was parked. All through my denunciation of this woman, I continued to spit on the floor. I don't know where I got the idea unless I was truly insane. I was. And that's what the insane do. Also, my Fats Waller t-shirt had ridden up around my shoulders, so I whipped it off and started screaming, "Police brutality! Police brutality!" "Eileen, shut up," said Barb. All in all, Barbara believed that I had started it, had started the whole thing. This is where she really became a little creep. She'd be this monster initially, then would get real contrite. Hadn't meant it. She didn't know it was a cop. That was her story. I did know it was a gun and was glad I hadn't gone for it. And in my heart, I know the moment of my flight towards the blue shoulders of the law. I was flying for Barb. I did love her. I was rescuing her from the professional mediocrity of white Datsuns. I was saving her from bourgeois captivity. Maybe bringing her home to the scrubby plains of my drunk art and love. Oh, Barb. Well, she didn't appreciate it, the little bitch. Why wouldn't I shut up? I was just making things so much worse. Also, in my real moment in the police station in Bath, Maine, was when I lifted my sword and revealed to them that I was a poet. I'm a poet, you fools. You asshole cops. Poet to me has always meant saint or hero, the dancing character on the stained glass window of my soul, the hand lifting slowly through time, the word that records my material against strong light. Gosh, why I live. It's the channel this ex-Catholic took when getting down on her knees didn't keep anyone alive or help the dead stay dead. I was a devout child, but my prayers were a ritualistic insurance and a real list of dead people. God, take care of Grandma, Grandpa. The list became so long it was unfeasible by age 11 or 12. So I began to keep a diary, and I sat under the light of the hall stairs and recorded what I ate that day, and who I thought hated me, and who I loved, and how I won. The poem got born in jobs when I realized I wouldn't win. Wasn't in fact even present. So I began to take up residence in my poems, saw my life as a loser's, hence poetic. Okay, so you're a poet. Let's hear a poem. I don't know my poems. I snobbishly preferred, being baldly attached to the page. I hold the poem, the sacred document. Oh, all right. This would be like martyrdom, baptism by fire, by blood. It's called roast chicken. Sometimes, roast chicken. Okay, roast chicken. Sometimes, some poet, she doesn't even know her poem. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I think about holding you and your beautiful tan. I think about, and your beautiful tan. I blew it, they weren't listening anymore. I had failed. So what? The test of blood was on. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I think about holding you and your beautiful tan, wishing you were all of mine, and I was only yours. Finished. Oh no, Barb said, when she asked what poem I was yelling at them. Oh no, she cringed, not that one. Everywhere I go is home, when I'm dreaming. Creamy traffic pouring past the NoHo Star. I thought you were coming to my home. I am. At my back, all of Bleecker Street, the confusing part of New York life, 3 generations back. Today, fruit stands, bad bars, Storm and Norman and Susie, village oldies, old cafes, depression now. The Bleecker Cinema, some interesting film. Become a member of the Bleecker Street Cinema your first year in town. It's doubtful I will move to Atlanta for business, to Texas to teach. Remember Soho? This is Soho. There's just these 2 bars in the OG where conceptual artists sat all day. You can hardly hear it, my poetry. It's in danger of vanishing if I don't write it down. Does it change like the neighborhoods? Yeah, well, if you don't buy it in a flash, who knows what'll happen to you? You'll wind up at the Lower East Side one day, all cobblestoned with dairy restaurants and trolley tracks like some old world. There was a giant line outside that old church on New Year's Day. You couldn't get in, so you went and had coffee with the guy who depressed you, Noel Sack. Eileen, why don't you work, he said. Noel, I said, waving my hands. I bought his old speakers and my check bounced. That was the last straw. He was so pissed. I guess he's in California or someplace. We went to that history of the avant-garde cinema at the Modern Art. I didn't want to be with him at all. His teacher, Duncan McNaughton, writes me about the real thing. Poetry that's not what? Language, ethnic, lesbian, black, like Charles Olson. I pack all of my things from your home into a Macy's shopping bag. Oh, give me that jacket. I wanted to wear that. And walking up 12th, Burr, it's really cold. Give me that white turtleneck. I did not forget the yellow legal paper folded with the lines going up. I forgot the tan notebook full of numbers I've got to call. I'm walking home with a Macy's bag with one sweater and a headband in it. Her soul is not a great soul. She dwells on domestic things. Her love. Her walk in the cold and even keeping to the tiniest rule makes me full. My home becomes a prayer mount when I get there, full of light and dust and the answer machine blinking. Hello, Eileen. This is Joel Lewis. I am the world's greatest poet. I do not seem to be obedient to the world today. Since television, there has been me. It's been a tall order to carry out, the whole case for entertaining literacy on my back. I was listening to this tape yesterday of Patti Smith in my home. It was before she had a band and everything in her voice was waiting for it. And even better, oh dear God, androgynous creep in the sky. Danny heard Hitler, and he says, Hitler said, bumble, bumble, blur, bullshit facts, not much, and then he exploded. You didn't know when, and that was what moved the crowd, the freedom of exploding in the air. Hitler, 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 pop, Hitler. I want to be Will Rogers, that's what I want to be. And that, folks, twirl, twirl, is the end of the world, as we know. I think I will be the Antichrist, rather than simple Eileen Myles. Poor she. The Antichrist is me. I died at the age of 33, yet I walked the streets of the East Village, joyful and remorseless, like a cruel and perfect poem. My butt, unsold. Sometimes I act vague about my lesbianity. No, it is deeper than all I know. The softness, the flagrant disposition. Today I used half a jar of dippity-doo and I got it right. I will lay my plastic head on your shoulder and weep. For you, but not for me. My compassion is boundless and incredible. My mission is not so predictable as reverse of the first. I take some of this and some of that. I wiggle unlike Christ. I'm not a girl nor a boy. I won't bear child nor knock you up. All my notions are felt, I think. As the arrow strikes a fatty part of the arm of the boy martyr, I am unwounded, wet from the well, clear-eyed and burning with dispassion, like Christ, but different. Each panel represents a different industry, or else each panel represents a different religion or Masonic lodge. Or else each panel represents a different age, like the awful age of Pisces, which we're leaving as we're chugging on towards the great new mysterious age of Aquarius. Everything you can think of that seems mysterious, everything's going to be like that. Even a sphinx would make you happy, because at least a sphinx is a fact. We're coming from there, the desert, and we're going right back in. Now, more than any other time in history, you really ought to please yourself. Because in mysterious winds, a cave inside your soul might be the only place to go. So why house a skunk? Once my whole apartment's gray, I can think this all out. But I'm hardly ever home. I barge in all smiles, the answering machine blinking, and my hands full of direct mail envelopes. Gay direct mail, Salvation Army, poor Bowery guys, culture. Everyone's looking for money. And I just came home from a hard day of looking for money for my organization, that of the poet. In your decline, I sing your song. At the end of the world, I am my poem. But that's still not it. I wish I could fly. I wish it was 10 years ago and this could be the future. Billie Holiday was on the radio. I was standing in the kitchen smoking my cigarette of this pack I planned to finish tonight. Last night of smoking youth. I made a cup of this funny kind of tea I've had hanging around. A little too sweet, an odd mix. My only impulse was to make it sweeter. Ivy Anderson was singing pretty late tonight in my very bright kitchen. I'm standing by the tub feeling a little older, nearly 30 in my very bright kitchen tonight. I'm not a bad-looking woman, I suppose. Oh, it's very quiet in my kitchen tonight. I'm squeezing this plastic honey bear, a noodle of honey dripping into the odd sweet tea. Honey bear's cover was loose, and somehow honey dripping down the bear's face, catching in the crevices beneath the bear's eyes. I'm standing in the kitchen, oh honey. I'm staring at the honey bear's face.